As the response to my previous video was lovely and really overwhelming and hope-inducing all at once, I thought it might be nice to slow down a breath for this next video. Both because my own heart needs the reminder too, and because I think we all could benefit from slowing down and stepping away from our own or someone else's sense of urgency for a moment. If it sounds like that could suit you, please come along as I make a little double-pointed knitting needle holder and talk about A Field Guide to Climate Anxiety by Sarah Jaquette Ray, which I just finished. You see, while I have encountered DPN holders already, I hadn't really needed one. But with my current enjoyment of 1mm and my lack of circulars in the same dimension, this hat that Spouse wanted is hanging out dangerously close to the edges with its stitches. Plus, another thing I've noticed about 1mm is that despite my project bag's best intentions, they simply cannot contain their stabbiness. So, for their own safety and everybody else's, something must be done. So, I am going to stitch a little rectangle, seam allowances facing out, and just a smidge wider than my double-pointed knitting needles. We are also going to attach these two snaps from my inherited stash. They will keep the knitting needles secure and the stitches from slipping off. After the edge has been folded in and stitched in place, we can begin the long, meditative practice of stitching one small patch of scrap fabric to the outside at a time. You could also stuff the scrap pieces with even smaller scrap thread and fabric scraps, but I do think my project will be sufficient to contain my knitting needles without it. So, A Field Guide to Climate Anxiety felt like a really timely book to me. I first heard about Sarah Jaquette Ray and her work through Hidden Brain, one of my all-time favorite podcasts. Sarah noticed that the students she was trying to teach climate change and communication to were not feeling empowered or motivated to work on mitigating it. Instead, they reported higher levels of anxiety, depression, and a general dread about the future and general state of the world. For some, the obsession and focus on things like individual carbon footprints rather than institutional ones may lead some to grow suicidal, feeling like the only thing they could do to clear their climate debt would be to end things and thus stop consuming things. And I know because I used to be one of them. But Sarah realized that the popular and current approach of barraging people with statistics and facts and doom and gloom was often more likely to induce guilt and paralysis rather than action and activism. And when she tried to remedy that in the beginning, for example by asking students to envision a future where they were thriving or where the effects of climate change were mitigated better than they are now, they simply couldn't. They could not imagine a future worth fighting for where their dreams for the future had even partially come to pass. because the kind of people who are more likely to attend climate change-related classes and pursue climate change-related degrees usually already know and are concerned for our environment as it is. They don't really need more facts. They need conscious and intentional hope and strategies for the long term. They need to be reminded that while a single individual does not hold a lot of power on their own, a collective does. And what is our world of power, politics, and change if not large and small, more or less organized collections of humans like you and me? So, a field guide explores alternatives to fear and information overwhelm. Sarah talks about rest and different ways to recharge, such as psychologist Sam Himmelstein's 4 key components for self-care and care for others. The first being regular rest, such as watching a show, reading a book, or going for a walk in nature. The second is effortful training, or cultivating skills where the payoff is far off into the future. The third is creativity and anything that recharges creativity, such as drawing, writing, drafting patterns, or visiting museums or other educational and awe-inspiring moments. Fourth, and last on Himmelstein's list is advocacy. Anything from learning to say no and cultivating healthy, positive relationships to working for higher level change and policy work. And the book is filled with anecdotes and actionable advice like that, such as being mindful of what sort of emotions we let fuel us in the long term. I don't know about you, but fear and anger have never been emotions I'm comfortable using as fuel. They burn me out in no time at all and will have me making mistakes left and right. Which means that even as we have long since moved away from stopping climate change to mitigating the effects we are already seeing all over the world, I still choose to cultivate hope and joy, even when that makes me come off as naive or is purely a pragmatic decision between naive, conscious hope and all-consuming dread and despair. Because I surely won't be able to get anything done if I succumb to the latter. And if we want to build movements that last and encourages people to join, we have to make it feel positive and rewarding to do so, such as doing our best to work with our brains and our psychology rather than against it. But one of my favorite parts of the book were the ones where Sarah goes to some length to show us why certain beliefs or attitudes may be holding us back, especially as white women or other large dominant groups of people, where it can be easy to fall into fallacies that may alienate us to other demographics, potentially without us ever realizing or amending it. It can be tempting, for instance, to reach for big, bombastic language when talking about some of the issues and changes we are facing. But although phrases like climate change is the biggest existential crisis humanity has ever faced may feel grand and right when writing speeches or protests or just discussing things with others, how does that make people feel if they have already gone through apocalyptic, world-changing events, or are currently doing so. Native Americans, Scandinavian Sami, and Australian Aboriginal people, among others, all faced targeted and very much existential murder and loss of the natural environments their way of life requires. Several Pacific Islanders are already losing their homes due to rising sea levels. And like Mary Anais Heglar said in her powerful piece, "Climate change isn't the first existential threat," and many other stellar pieces, the very pillars of the US has been and continues to be an existential threat for Black people. On the insurmountable challenge of fighting slavery, she tells us, "You don't fight something like that because you think you will win. You fight it because you have to." And some humility on our part, even when we really believe in our cause, would probably not go amiss. And with that, our little patchwork friend is finished. Ready to keep my needles and projects secure both from others they may stab and from little void friends who wants to eat them. Anyway, I really rather liked Sarah's book, especially as it pertains to resiliency and joy, much more so than guilt and anger. A lot of us are coming to terms with how climate change is no longer anything that can be stalled or reversed, and that mitigating where we can while learning to live and thrive in a climate-changed world requires a whole different kind of mindset. Thank you for watching this video and other videos like it. References, as usual, are in the description box below. If you want to join in our Know the Clothes project, we are currently still running discussions within our community Discord server, which is also linked below, and trying to figure out what to do and where to start. And, of course, thank you to our lovely patrons who continue to make these mad, ambitious, and potentially world-changing projects possible. Even if it's just a small piece of the whole, many small pieces build a larger whole and all that. And I have heard some of you, I get some feedback that some people would find it interesting, and I have to agree, if I were to show some of the methods and techniques we could use to analyze clothing in a laboratory setting. And I have wanted to do that for a long while, but unless institutions like NTNU here in my city, wink wink, nudge nudge, comes and proposes that we could collaborate with projects together, that is something that would require a lot more funding and a much bigger budget than I currently have for the channel. So I'm very open to collaborations if I can convince someone that it would be a good idea and good PR for the university. I mean, why not send an email? The worst that happens is to say no, right? But yeah, I want to do that, and we'll see if we can manage. But unless someone wants to collaborate, it's going to need a lot more funding. But yeah, that's it for this time. I hope you take care and don't let all the despair of the world tear you all the way down. And I'll see you next time. Bye.